One of the major reasons to take infectious diseases very seriously is that they are infectious. If we look at the term infectious diseases, it has two parts, infectious and disease. The disease part is bad enough, of course. Infectious diseases can at best make you feel a little off, but in the worst case, it can kill you. But it's really the first part of the term, infectious, that's most worrisome. The ability of the organisms that cause the disease to spread from person to person is why infectious diseases can be such a dramatic threat to the health of a population. There are multiple ways in which an infectious disease can spread. Broadly, we can classify transmission as either direct or indirect. Direct transmission means that the infection can be passed on directly to the next host. Indirect transmission instead means that there is an intermediate contact, typically a vector such as a mosquito or a fly. Let's look at direct transmission first. In the case of direct transmission, an infection can be passed on directly from person to person. There are a number of ways in which this can happen, the most famous being airborne transmission and sexual transmission. Let's take a look at airborne transmission. Imagine a person who's infected with the flu. If that person sneezes, about 40,000 droplets will be expelled into the air, and these droplets will contain the genetic material of the influenza virus. Some of these droplets are so small that they will remain suspended in the air for some time. If you breathe in these droplets, you may potentially get infected. Other droplets are so big that they will quickly be pulled to the ground by gravity, so they won't go very far. But if you happen to be so unlucky to stand close enough to the sneezing person, some of these large droplets may land on you, your mouth, your nose, your eyes, and the virus in these droplets may then enter your body from there. Both of these transmission types are forms of airborne transmission. Another mode of direct transmission is sexual transmission. During sexual activity, there's a lot of potential for direct transmission of microorganisms, typically involving bodily fluids. This is known to be the dominant transmission route of HIV, for example. Now, indirect transmission means that the microorganisms are not transmitted directly from one person to the next, but through an intermediate carrier. That carrier can be an object, in which case we speak of so-called fomite transmission. For example, doorknobs are known to be full of microorganisms such as bacteria, and by touching a doorknob, or any object really, you both deposit bacteria yourself and get some bacteria from the doorknob on your hand. If you then touch your mouth or nose, you may become infected. Water is another well-known intermediate carrier. Waterborne transmission is a huge problem because it's obviously impossible to avoid water. A famous disease that is predominantly transmitted through water is cholera. Many diarrheal diseases are also transmitted through water. Finally, the carrier can be another animal, in which case we speak of vector-borne transmission. Mosquitoes, flies, and fleas are some of the more well-known vectors. Mosquitoes in particular, since they're famous for transmitting the microorganisms that cause malaria and dengue fever. Plague, the disease responsible for the death of about 100 million people in the Middle Ages, is transmitted through fleas, and the fleas often live on rats, which is why rats have such a bad reputation, even though they're actually cute little animals. So to sum up, there are different ways of transmitting a disease-causing organism to another person. If you want to stop a disease from spreading, you need to break the chains of transmission. And that's why understanding the various transmission types is so important.